He was left for dead in a fire station parking lot in the middle of the pandemic when restrictions were in place in South Dakota. Miles Bronner of Aberdeen died of an overdose at just 37 years old. His mother blames his death on the governor's executive order and the Department of Corrections failing to do its job. In tonight's KELOLAND News investigation, Angela Kennecke has the story of Bronner's 14-year struggle with addiction and looks into how the system, according to his mother, let him down.
Miles Bronner's mother describes him as a sensitive soul with a passion for music.
Very social, and he enjoyed art, and then he found skateboarding when he was a teenager, and that was his thing, and guitar playing. He loved the guitar.
Bronner's struggle with addiction began at age 23.
He had a breakup, and he just kind of went upside down.
Boucher says Bronner used everything from alcohol to heroin to meth to benzos.
He went through treatment. We did multiple IVCs, involuntary committals, and that was kind of our only recourse because he wasn't breaking the law.
Eventually, though, Bronner did break the law and was sentenced to prison for drugs.
We never gave up hope. He struggled to find the hope. He was in a system that was complicated.
When Bronner got out of prison, he turned to a substance called Kratom, which can have both an opioid and a stimulant effect on users.
It's legal. You can get it at your corner gas stations and at the smoke shops, but it should be a Schedule I. It can be abused so easily. And Miles had an overdose in December of 2018. Are you saying you love your mom? I love you too. He had multiple strokes. He was in a coma. We didn't know if he was going to live or not. When he had his overdose and they had done the brain scans, they showed us the brain damage that he had developed over the years of abuse.
Despite all the times through treatment and sober living, Bronner never found lasting recovery.
And the aftercare is where we always lost him.
A group of lawmakers in Pierre is trying to make changes to improve treatment for addiction through the Department of Corrections. In the last legislative session, they were able to secure funding for 7 additional parole officers whose job it is to help parolees succeed. But they say to effectively handle the state's caseload, 13 more are needed.
We just need more. Without the proper number of CSOs, we will continue to see people who have drug addiction slip through the cracks.
In January, Bronner was sent to the Community Transition Program in Rapid City. On a furlough on March 18th, Bronner was caught stealing from a liquor store. He was too drunk to return to the center and ended up in the Pennington County Jail. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Even though Bronner had a violation for using a substance and not reporting back to the program, Governor Kristi Noem's executive order on April 7th declared that sanctions for using could be deferred due to COVID-19.
The 7th of April, he was walked out the door with his box of belongings.
However, in order for Bronner to leave the Community Transition Program, he was required to have a job, a place to stay, and some money. His parole officer was required to verify all 3.
They were verified or they were not?
They were not verified.
How do you know that?
I called 3 of the employers, none of which knew that Miles was released. I was part of the other 2 things that was supposed to be responsible, and nobody contacted me.
The money and the place to stay.
Right.
No one contacted you and asked
Nobody.
if that was true?
Nobody.
A Department of Corrections spokesperson tells KELOLAND News this particular inmate had an approved parole plan, including employment and a place to live, and the executive order played no part in his release to parole supervision, and tells us that Bronner's parole plan was validated. But Boucher says she made a desperate call to his parole officers after he was released.
I said, Miles has to have a plan. What's his plan? He goes, plan? He goes, I've only met him once. He goes, he's going to have to get a job. And he said something about treatment. I said, can he, I think at that time I said, can he come back into the prison? And he said no. And I said, can he do inpatient? And he said no. I asked if he could go to Springfield. He said no. And it was all because of COVID.
Bronner ended up at a friend's house in a remote part of the Black Hills with spotty cell service. Here's what Boucher knows about the night of May 1st.
Came back about 11 o'clock that night and found Miles unconscious in the bathroom, and he wasn't breathing.
South Dakota has Good Samaritan laws in place, which means if someone calls in an overdose to save a life, they won't get arrested for drugs. But with no cell service, Bronner's friend put him in the car instead.
He was afraid. He was a convicted felon. He had just gotten off parole.
He ended up driving Bronner to the Box Elder fire station, where he dialed 911.
So when he saw the lights from the rescue coming, he left Miles in the parking lot by himself. And Miles was found alone and deceased in the parking lot. The idea of him being found in a parking lot is just tragic to me. I wish they would have called 911. I wish they would have found a way. I wish they would have stayed with him.
Yet Boucher doesn't blame the friend. She blames the system, which she says let her son down time and time again.
I've been told that it was unconscionable that somebody with a disease as big as his could be just walked out the door. The grief is terrible. I've spent all these years trying to save his life and keep that hope going for him.
COVID-19 also limited the number of people at Bronner's funeral. His mother's Al-Anon friends lined the streets of the cemetery and stood outside of their cars holding hearts. My request for an interview with the Department of Corrections about Bronner's release from the Rapid City Community Transition Program was denied.
Thanks, Angela.